Welcome to the New Haitian Generation. I'm your host, Mecca Grimo Marcelin, and today we're touching on a very delicate topic, domestic violence. As you know, October is Domestic Violence Month, so we have a very special guest with us, Tonias Exantys from Cries. Tonias, how are you?
I am doing great and so excited to be here.
You look fabulous.
Thank you. And you look great yourself.
I appreciate you. Thank you. Thank you so much. Tonias, we have a very, very exciting and deep conversation about domestic violence. But before we go into that, we'd like to know a little bit about you.
Well, a little bit about me. My name, again, what you stated, is Tonias Exantys. I am a mother of three. I have three beautiful children. I am also Haitian descent. My parents were born in the island of Latortue, and I was born in Freeport, Bahamas when my parents migrated over to Freeport, Bahamas. And then I migrated to the States, and that's where my life began.
So your life didn't begin before that?
Well, the part that we're going to talk about.
Oh, got you. Okay. All right. All right. And so what was your family environment like?
Well, my family environment, I do have 5 brothers. So we are a family of 6. My mother...
You didn't get bullied at all?
I'm not too sure if I can agree with that because, 5 brothers, it was very tough.
Well, you got bullied by the brothers, but not by any of outside influence, though.
Well, yes and no. We're gonna get into that because I will say that, growing up in high school and so forth, and because I have 5 brothers, of course, no one wanted to mess with the little sister from the Exantys family.
Right.
And, of course, my mother was a single parent. When we migrated over, yes, my mother and father was together, but eventually they departed. And growing up, basically, the family household was my mother, my 5 brothers, and myself.
Wow. What was education like for you going through that? You spoke about school. Nobody wanted to mess with you because they knew you had the 5 brothers.
Yep.
Were you able to focus on school and, what did you get your degree in or what did you become of and that mom was happy about? Yeah,
well, I will say that I was able to focus because of the fact that you were the only girl. So because I was the only girl, of course, my mother always kept me separate from the boys, was able to do what they can do. And that's pretty much how it is a lot with the Haitian household. They always want to keep the little girl a little bit more, close in, refined, and so forth. So I was able to focus on my schools. I will say that I was very good in high school, from elementary all the way to high school, keeping good grades. And I will talk about a little bit in the high school part because I don't want to get, fast forward that conversation. But yes, I was very focused. And when it comes down to the degrees, I was able to manage to graduate with my high school, have my high school diploma. And from there, I was still able to manage to get my bachelor's degree, go to Nova Southeastern University, and also graduated with my master's as well.
Touch it right there, sister. Brag about it for sure.
Yes.
And what's the degrees in? Master
So my bachelor's is in business administration, and then for my master's is also my MBA. I was able to get my master's in business administration.
Okay.
Yes.
And so you said you're able to focus, and that's a great thing, especially with that many, brothers or activity going on in the house, especially with boys.
Yes.
I was going to ask you, what's your biggest influence? Because I know you got 5 brothers. You got mom. You said mom was a single parent.
Yes.
I know you look up to mom. What would you say is your biggest influence
Well,
in
actually,
life?
you just said it, my mother.
Okay.
My mother is my biggest influence because, from, growing up in a Haitian family home where your parents do not read, they do not write, but she still was able to move over here into the States, purchase her own home, right? That a lot of people are very struggling to even be able to have ownership. And from there, for her biggest success was the fact that she was able to literally have a home so she can create stability for her family. And then she worked very hard. So regardless of the challenges of not being able to read and to write, she still makes sure that she had a solid foundation for us. She was a strong woman, very independent, and was able to just face all of any type of adversity that she had to go through and making sure that we went to school.
So she's the biggest influence
She's the
in your
biggest
life.
Influence.
What kind of qualities would you say that you've obtained from her?
Working hard. Very, I would say, very driven as far as what it is to become successful regardless of the challenges that you have in your life. The other thing is always giving. My mother was a person to where she was always giving. Every time when there's a family member that will migrate over from the Bahamas or Haiti, she always opened up her home, right? Everyone always went through my mother's home. In addition to that, she always fed the whole family, the whole neighborhood. The whole block. So she was a woman to where I looked up to, regardless of the fact that she did not have the highest, degrees or didn't have the highest success. But success for me, that I define her being successful, is that she was able, as a single parent, raise all of her 6 kids, make sure that all of us was in college, and we grew up in Liberty City, right? We were the only Haitian family in Liberty City, because I guess when I think about my thought process for my mom is, well, why didn't she just go to Little Haiti just like everyone, but she actually purchased her home in Liberty City, and we did have a lot of issues growing up because we were the only Haitian family there. I remember always having different, fights and arguments with our neighbors because they didn't like, the Haitians in the neighborhoods. So, but yeah.
Wow. You said a lot there. So listen,
Yes.
Haitian family living in Liberty City.
Yes.
But you answered one of my questions. I want to still ask you. The next question I was going to ask you was, when did you develop a love for giving and helping people? And you just talked about how mom, loved to give.
Watching her all the time.
So that kind of answered the question right there. And so she fed the whole block. And so you got that passion for helping and giving to other people from mom.
Yes, and that's the reason why she's my greatest influence.
Right.
As I watch her, she just encouraged me to just even do better. And it's always that you're always working so hard for you to be successful because you want to give back to your parents who gave you the ability to come here in the States and make a life for yourself.
Right. Talk to us about your organization, Silent Cries. One of the reasons why we're here, because again, it's Domestic Violence Month. October is Domestic Violence Month. And so this shouldn't just be 1 month.
No.
Well, we talking about, matter of fact, tell the people what domestic violence is, looks like, sounds like, because a lot of people hear domestic violence and I don't think they know exactly, or some people don't know exactly what that might be.
I mean, to simplify domestic violence, right? Domestic violence is physical, verbal, emotional, and mental. Anything that someone is trying to take control of you in those different aspects, whether it's physical, to where someone is putting their hands on you, to where it's verbal, to someone that is looking down on you and always just constantly, just always into your emotional state. So when someone is always, saying something negative about you, right? And you now believe it, that now becomes mental, right? Because it's in your head. That's what you believe. And then it becomes emotional. So any type of physical, emotional, verbal type of abuse that someone is using to control you, right, to gain their powers over you, that is pretty much what domestic violence is. A lot of people will always think that the physical abuse, because that's the first thing they think about, is more of domestic violence, right? When you see scars that is on, an individual. And when we talk about domestic violence, it's not just women, it's also men. We're trending in a generation to where now men are also being abused. And then also when we talk about the mental aspects of it, and the reason why people don't realize this in a lot of relationships is because later on, that's when you start seeing the mental and emotional damage that person has been able to gain. And then now that's where the self-esteem and the self-confidence is coming in. It's just like the famous word a lot of people like to say, gaslighting. Gaslighting or narcissistic, when you're seeing people have narcissistic behaviors to where you're expressing how you feel, but then they make you think differently.
Wow. Is this something that I see that you're very passionate about it. You know a lot of information about it. Was it a loved one that was dealing with domestic violence, or were you affected directly by domestic violence?
I was affected by domestic violence.
Directly?
Yes, directly.
Okay.
Directly.
Tell us a little bit about.
Well, let's get into the story as far as me, as how I was affected by domestic violence. And this also translates to growing up. So growing up, of course, what I said earlier is, growing up in a Haitian family home, I'm the only girl. My mother, the way that, Haitian family homes like to be able to raise their little girls is cook, clean, stay home, no conversation with boys, and we don't even talk about sex relationship because that's just absolutely a no-no. Taboo. It's just one of the biggest taboos in the Haitian community that they don't want to talk about. But yet, when, looking at my brothers, they were able to have their girlfriends, and you see them having, just bringing the girlfriends in the homes, right? And then when you're going to school...
Be careful, they're going to be watching. They're going to be watching this right here. You're telling on them, snitching now.
Listen, everything that I say is something that I always talk to them about. So they always like, there goes little sis. She's always talking about these things, right? But... they're the ones, as far as boys, when I say they, I'm referring to the boys in family homes, right? Especially Haitian family homes. They have more freedom to do things, right? They're out there enjoying their life. They are able to have girlfriends. They're able to hang out with their friends because we don't see for the guys and boys that there's no threat, right? The only thing that we see as a threat is for our little girls, to where you don't want them to get pregnant at a very early age. You don't want them to get into a relationship at a very early age, but we don't talk about why. We just say, hey, no, papa lave petit garçon, and, don't have any friends, and so forth. So because of that, and especially living in Liberty City and not being able to go out and have, fun with my friends, and if I did have fun with my friends, I had to make sure that I was in the house before 6 p.m., sun is down, I better be inside the house. Because if sun is down and I'm outside, there we go.
That's it.
That's a beating right there.
That's pow pow. I was going to say pow pow.
But that's a beating right there, right?
League-wise and everything.
Yes, right? So because of that, and just looking at everyone, I just was like very curious. It's like, why is it that I can't have many friends? I can't talk to boys, and the only thing for my life is stay home, cook, and clean, right? And that's the reason why I was so focused in school, right? Because it's like school, home, and that's it. And from that, and because of this, the only way that I felt that I was able to have a boyfriend was for me to get into a relationship with a close family friend, right? Someone that is very close, someone that is not going to make anyone suspicious that I'm having this relationship with a close friend of the family.
So you confided in somebody, a family member?
Well, yes.
Okay.
I got into a relationship with a family member to where when my mother, when she used to travel back and forth to the Bahamas, and I would say at that time I was about 12 years old, and I would go back to the Bahamas, and of course, not bragging on myself, pretty young little girl and so forth. Mm-hmm. So when I would go to the Bahamas, people, the guys, right, will always be like, oh, who is this little girl, and this and that. And even going back to the Bahamas, sometimes that, because of the fact that the way that I spoke in the American language, right? Because I was there since I was 2 years old.
Right.
So while others were saying, oh, they used to call us a Yankee because, the Bahamians didn't like the Americans and so forth. Right. But then there was others that was interested in me. So because they were flirting with me, never had any conversations about relationships, I thought it was cute.
Right.
So the individual who is, the person that we're going to talk about, I met him at 12 years old, but that's not when the relationship started. He would travel back and forth from the Bahamas to the States, and then he will always come and visit the family because, it's a very close neighborhood, right? Everyone knows everyone. And so when he started coming back to the States, I would say at that time, I probably was like 16 years old. Okay. And so
how old is he?
I would say that he is about 3 years older than me. Okay. We're still within the same age bracket, but he's about 3 years older than me. I hope I'm not saying this incorrectly because this been so many years, right?
They'll come back now. A lot of stuff coming back now.
Yeah, but I would say that he was about 3 to 5 years older than me. So, when he would come over, from the time when I was 12 years old to the time that I was 16, he drew interest in me. And of course, I was, flattered about it. he's coming over. Mommy's not going to know that, hey, he's flirting with me. My brothers doesn't know at that time that he's flirting with me and so forth. So I end up having a relationship with him. So at the beginning, of course, it's cute, nice words, nothing to be afraid of. It wasn't something constant because it was every time that he would travel back and forth. And when he eventually decided to live in the States, that's when the relationship started growing more and more. And at this time, of course, I'm in high school. So in high school, I'm sneaking around. Again, he's coming over. He may be talking to the brothers, but he's really talking to me. Mom is probably not there because she feels okay. And I will say that eventually my brothers knew, and they kept it a secret as well. So they knew that he was also speaking to me. But I will say that as things start getting to the conversation that we're talking about as far as domestic violence, I will say that sneaking around, I got pregnant. So now here I am, I'm pregnant in high school, teenage mother. So of course that was a devastation for my mom. Of course everybody was upset. Of course a lot of negative things, was said to me, she's the fast girl. And, I don't really have to get into all of those details, but when you are in high school at that time, 11th grade, I was in the 11th grade, 17 years old, that's nothing pretty about it.
Right.
And that's because I didn't protect myself. I didn't protect myself because never had a conversation about, relationship, never having a conversation about sex, making sure that you keep, if it's okay to say this word, a condom on and so forth. So because of these things, I just was very, unprotected, unguarded, and I ended up getting pregnant in high school, 11th grade. And the first sign that I saw as far as an abusive sign, right, from him, because again, like I said earlier, everything was cute. The only devastation was the fact that I got pregnant. Of course, the family was upset. Of course, I got in trouble of this. But at this point, my mother couldn't do anything. I'm already pregnant, right? I'm not going to have an abortion. I'm not going to get rid of, my child at that time and so forth. So it's more of she just had to just lag him, right? And so now going into going into the 12th grade, because I would say it was probably towards the ending of my 11th grade. And now going into 12th grade, where do you place this teenage girl that's in high school? And I went to Miami-Jackson Senior High. That was my high school. And back then, we had what is called COPE. COPE is a school for young teenage mothers to go to school, and they're able to still be able to go through their whole pregnancy. And if they choose to go back to their high school, they can choose to go back to their high school, or they can stay at COPE until they graduate. I decided to go back to my high school after I had my daughter, early part of my 12th grade. And so early part of my 12th grade, fast forwarding, prom came around. Prom came around. Of course, he took me to prom because at this point, my mom just hands done, right?
While you're pregnant, he still is he's present.
He's still present. Everything is still good.
It's a relationship.
There's no sign, right? No sign whatsoever. The first sign is when I went to my high school prom. So going to my high school prom and sitting at the table with all of the friends, right? And one of my classmates, who is a guy, which reached over to my plate, hey, Tonias, you want that? You want your potatoes and this? And I'm like, no, you can have it. You should have seen his face, just because it's like coming into your territory.
Right.
Just because my classmate put his hand in my plate and grabbed my food, and he
Well, you gave him permission.
Me.
You gave him permission.
But I gave him permission,
gotcha.
right in front of him, nothing, just everything normal. So I gave him permission. And my kid's father literally was very upset. You should have saw his face, the anger that he had and how he looked at me. And he even asked me, well, why is this guy touching your plate and this and that? So because that was off guard for me and that was not normal, that was actually my first sign that I saw of him being very aggressive for something as simple as this. I didn't enjoy my prom that night. And I just, pretend like everything was good because of the words that he was saying to me and because of the anger that I saw in his face, and I didn't want to escalate. So I just blew it off, right, to try to just enjoy the rest of the night. So that was my first sign that I saw of him. and prom night is over. Then now the next thing is I graduated from high school, and now we moved in together.
Stop right there. Was that just the only like red flag?
That was at that time.
Looking back now, that was the only red flag.
That was the only the first red flag.
Okay, so now we're talking about going. Now you're moving into how much time in between should people look for these red flags? Because you're in a relationship,
Yeah.
it's not going to be perfect.
Yeah.
And so you got a red flag at your prom.
Yeah.
Now you're talking about moving into.
Yeah.
So when did this second red flag come into play?
Well, the second red flag came into play to where actually it was before we moved in together. I was still staying with my mom. And he was staying, because he moved over to the States, he needs somewhere to stay, close friends of the family. He was staying in another relative house of ours. And of course, they know we're together. They still allow us to see each other. And we got into an argument when we were over to one of the family members' house that he lived in. And we got into an argument and in the car, and this was in the car. And that's where, because of the argument that we had, he literally punched me right in my face. And when he punched me,
I feel like Oprah right now. Hold on. This is
So we were in the car, and he punched me in my face because of the argument that we had. And that was the second sign. But that sign was more aggressive.
That's definitely an apparent sign.
Yes.
And there shouldn't have been any other signs after that second sign.
Correct.
But based on your organization, Silent Cries,
Yes.
which, but I'll let you speak about that.
Yeah.
I don't want you to tell all about all the
Yeah.
incidents that took place, but you definitely were affected. What was the time you just said that's it?
Oh, the time that I said that's it, right?
And how many of those red flags, because a lot of people really are in these relationships and they think that, okay, I'll bypass the first one.
Yeah.
The second one, that was probably...
Listen, you're going to bypass many and many, right?
Okay.
You're going to bypass. So as I stated, the first sign was the prom. The second sign was the punch in the face. The punch in the face led to more punches, more kicks, because when you are in a relationship with someone, and especially when you have a child, right? Regardless of what's going on and regardless of what people say, you always trying to figure out, okay, how can I fix this? Because now you, as a victim, you're blaming yourself. You're the ones that's saying that, hey, you're causing the argument. You're making that other person upset, really, right? Versus, hey, it's not that you're making this person upset. It's just that this person is very aggressive. And this individual also is coming from a background to where they saw that, right? People don't just become this way, right? It's something that is a learned behavior that he also saw. And that's the reason why when you go to therapists, they always ask you the first question, how was your upbringing, right? So, of course, not knowing these things before and now having my nonprofit organization and educating myself more based off of my experiences, these are the things that I try to promote and express, that when you're seeing the signs, you are going to ignore the signs. But then it's more of trying to empower people to react to the signs a little bit more quickly, because for me, it just went from blows to blows, and then from blows to blows. And when you ask me the question, when was enough, I think enough was enough when I ended up getting pregnant the second time. Getting pregnant the second time, and the first child was my baby girl, the second child was my baby boy. And now seeing my baby boy, I didn't want him to experience the same thing that my daughter witnessed for I would say at least 2.5 years of her life. And then when my son had him, I was being abused, pregnant as well, right? And to not go into the details. So I said, you know what? I have to make a change. I cannot continue in the same manner, because if I continue in the same manner, my son is going to see it. And now my son is going to also become an abuser. And I literally went to a job interview with a busted face. And going into the job interview with a busted face, I didn't even care anymore. So at that point is where you become numb. So when we talk about the timing, because a lot of people always ask, well, why are you still doing this? Why you don't hurry up and do it? There's no timing. The timing is on the individual person to say enough is enough for me, because you have to find something that gives you that encouragement to free yourself. And for me was my son. For me was building the courage to just go into a job interview with a busted face and not even caring what the other side outside saw. And I know the lady who interviewed me saw it and probably thought I was crazy. But for me, I was like, yeah. Wow. I'm going to move forward from this. And after that job interview, that's when, of course, months later, I freed myself. I moved on and I left him. I won't say that it was easy, but I did leave him, and I eventually gained my independence.
And you got, wow, Tonias, your story, we need an hour. And you know this is only a 30-minute show.
I know.
Listen, okay, so everything that you talked about, I'd like to know about Silent Cries. Yeah. But we don't have much time.
Yes.
I'd like to know about the fitness boot camp,
yes.
how that helps as well, how that's tied into everything, and also like to know about the Purple Hearts panel.
Okay, so Silent Cries is a nonprofit organization to educate, prevent, and empower victims and survivors. And we focus on both men and women as well as children, because when you think about a household dynamics, if I fix a woman, I have to fix a man. And if I don't fix a man and a woman, then we're we're impacting our children. So that's the reason why we focus on both men, women, and children. And it's more on sharing, more of me relating to other victims and survivors, to where I help them and assist them with different tiers. And when I'm saying different tiers, as far as, counseling, when I was going through it, I didn't go through counseling. We know that you need to go through counseling in order to get through this, because you have to be able to heal from yourself. And then the other part, you have to be able to gain your independence, and that's where the financial literacy comes in, to where you have to be able to gain your independence, because a lot of victims and survivors, they go back because they're not financially independent. So they need to be able to go through that. And then also the education and so forth. And the last part that I want to also say is that under Silent Cries, we have a platform called Changing Mindset, Changing Lives, to where we're hosting monthly events so that we can be able to talk about these different things that happens in healthy relationship, to help promote men and women to create healthy relationships. And that's pretty much where the boot camp is coming from. Okay. That's pretty much where the Purple Hearts Brunch is coming from, to where the Purple Hearts Brunch, to where we have survivors share their stories. And then the boot camp fitness is one of my therapy. And the reason why I have the boot camp workout is because that's my journey of healing, and that's my journey to just free myself from all fears that I have through fitness.
Wow. You're watching the New Haitian Generation. Yeah. The topic today, domestic violence. October is Domestic Violence Month. We're with Tonias Exantys. She has an organization called Silent Cries. Also the Fitness Boot Camp and the Purple Hearts. Real quick, how can people locate you so that,
Yeah, so the way that people can locate me, you can locate me on Instagram, which is silentcries.dvo, and that's on Instagram. And you can also locate me on Facebook at Silent Cries. We do have a website where you can go to silentcries.net, and then you can also reach me directly. My contact number is 305-528-7102, and that is actually my direct contact, to where if anyone that is struggling through domestic violence and you need someone to talk to, just reach out to me, because I can relate in so many facets. As I said, teenage mother, as well as being in an abusive relationship, and then also trying to educate the Haitian, especially the Haitian community, more as far as how do we bring up our kids so that we can talk about these type of things to avoid them.
Tonias Exantys from Silent Cries, I want to thank you for coming on to the show.
You're welcome.
And you watching the New Haitian Generation. Stay tuned next week.